This is Money Moves on VSiN, the sports betting network.
Four is set, and we are headed out to Indianapolis. We'll get to that and much more here on this wonderful edition of Money Moves on a Monday. Jonathan Von Tobel flying solo, but don't worry. We got a lot of great guests that are going to join us throughout the program today. Get your thoughts and their thoughts on what's going to happen. Your thoughts can be included on social media, at me, JVT, at VSiN Live. Tell us everything that you'd like to hear or talk about, whether or not you like the haircut, all of the sort of things that you would like to cover, the important things on this Monday with the Final Four just on the horizon. But we start our show here on Money Moves the same way every day, so let's do what we always do.
It's time for the top headlines and topics of the day. This is The Rundown.
All right, first up, we are entering the home stretch. Some teams have less than 10 games left in the association, and we have some heavyweight battles we have to discuss, both in terms of races in the NBA postseason, divisions, and more. We had a couple of big ones that we're going to discuss from over the weekend as well and what they mean moving forward. Our Charlotte Hornets had a really big and important weekend, Saturday and Sunday. Failed the test. Sunday, not as bad, but Saturday was a winnable opportunity for Charlotte. We have a lot to get to as we are entering the most important part of the season for the NBA. And, of course, we have the regular handicapping card to get to as well. Also, as part of the show, you know what we call it. We usually handicap the hardwood, but today we got some hardball handicapping. Very good slate of baseball games today. A lot of really good pitching matchups that we're going to have to dive into as well. A little bit of a skew toward the American League for the games that I like today, but one of the big dramatic spots is going to be later tonight. Roki Sasaki will get the start for the Los Angeles Dodgers. A putrid spring training, but you know, from a fantasy perspective, I had to stream them today in fantasy, and also maybe we're looking at from a wagering standpoint. We'll talk about that and much more. Plus, our own Jensen Lewis will be with us as we get his best bets and we look ahead to what today is going to be in Major League Baseball. But we start, of course, with yesterday and the Final Four. Indianapolis, here we come. Now, this means a lot of different things. First and foremost, I get to be out there Thursday and Friday. Money Moves will be live from Radio Row for Final Four. Discuss a little bit of college basketball. We're out there, talk to some coaches and some other folks while we're on the ground getting ready for what is a great Final Four teams that we will discuss. But going back to last night, hard not to start with Duke's latest collapse in the NCAA tournament, which puts UConn back into the Final Four, up by 2 points with 10 seconds left and inbounding the ball. You break the press, you get the ball to Caden Boozer, who turns it over at half court. Braylon Mullins does the rest, and Duke goes on to lose this game. A dramatic loss in the NCAA tournament for a second consecutive year. Take a look at these. John Shire, we're going to hear from him in a moment. But the way that Duke has collapsed in 4 of their most recent losses, these are your peak in-game win probability of Duke's last 4 losses that stretch back to last year. The 2025 Final Four versus Houston, in-game probability of winning that game, 97.5%. December of 2025 versus Texas Tech, 97.8%. February 2026, you remember this? That was that North Carolina lost in-game probability of 95.1% to win that thing. And last night, a 98.7% chance, according to some improbability metrics, of winning that game against UConn in the Elite Eight, and they ultimately fail. Let's hear from John Shire. First, this one, he, like many of us after the result last night, really didn't have any words for what transpired.
It's cannot be more disappointed and feeling for our guys at the same time of just trying to process what happened. I don't have the words. What I do know is literally this team, what each individual player went through just to play the game. I've never seen anything like it. What these guys did have to get ready, their foot injuries. He's got a black eye. He's playing the whole game. And I'm incredibly sorry for these guys that they got to go through this. This is on us. We're going to be in this together. And the year that this guy's had has been absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. And I don't have words other than just how proud I am of these guys and how disappointed we are.
Next to him, Cam Boozer, of course, with the black eye, very disappointed about the result. I wanted to play that because you see the emotion. I mean, we didn't show Boozer there because the camera's tight to Shire. He's got tears in his eyes. Obviously, a ridiculous and dramatic result in which the second half turnovers played a massive part of how that game went down. And that, I think, is ultimately the big takeaway here. A single play is going to be remembered forever. We're going to see it in the one shining moment montage at the end of the NCAA tournament. Mullins 3 is going to be one of those highlights you remember as we move forward. But there was so much more to that second half. And here's Shire one more time talking about just that. Yes, it's the 3, but there's so much that went into that Duke collapse.
We just have to secure it, right? I mean, we got it. They had a foul. I was ready for a timeout, and we just got to hold on. And, it's easy to look at that play. I look at every play that happened, especially in that second half. This is not about one play. It's about every play to put us in that position. And that's what you don't want to do. Where one play, something can happen. And so for me, look, it's going to be tough, but it's not going to be on one play.
1-17 was the starting shooting percentage for UConn from beyond the arc. They end up ending out real hot, about 4 or 5 or 4 or 6 to end it, of course, including that final one. But that is what it's about. I mean, UConn's adjustments in the second half were great. They were attacking those bigs. They were driving by them. They were trying to get to the free throw line as well, getting to the rim. The adjustments from Hurley have been absolutely fantastic. He's one of the better in-game coaches we have seen, and now UConn is back in the Final Four yet again, something we have to get used to at this point right now, considering they continue to do it. The Illini open up as 1.5-point favorites, total of 139.5 versus this UConn team. It's going to be very interesting to see the way that this thing is bet. I was talking about this with our colleague, Will Hill, who joins us on Fridays here on Money Moves, and we were talking about on his podcast, Should Have Bet More, part of the VSiN podcast family. Go check it out wherever you get your podcasts, about how this is going to get bet, where this is going to go, and ultimately where it could close by the time we get to tip-off. At the open of 1.5, immediately went up to 2.5 in favor of Illinois. Totals up to about 140, depending on where you look, 140.5. And I would tend to agree. Now, these two teams, as actually every single one of these teams have been in the Final Four, have been great bet on teams. Illinois has covered every single spread that they have faced so far in the NCAA tournament. UConn has covered every game since the failed cover against Furman to open the NCAA tournament. Both teams, really nothing to write home about in terms of the totals. 3-1 to the under for Illinois, even split through 4 games for UConn. But ultimately where I land is it's going to be Illinois for me, and this comes across probably as futile, considering we've talked about UConn a lot. I've noted the fact that in a bad Big East, this UConn team did not meet market expectations, but maybe there was a downgrade of UConn heading into the NCAA tournament that I did not become aware of, especially after that failed cover against Furman. But they have taken care of business. But one thing I think that sticks out about a matchup like this is the three-point shooting, and it's not just the efficiency, because UConn has not shot the ball well, as we know. You look at them for the season, 34%. We have seen the struggles in the tournament. We have seen the fact that they have had to rely on Terrace Reed, a front-court player, as their offensive generator for the most part for the last 3 games, and it really has not been a style of basketball that you would think would be conducive to winning on a neutral court and winning consistently in terms of basketball games. But Illinois, it's the volume. It's the fact that they take about 50% of their shots from beyond the arc. We'll see if they can maintain that 35% three-point shooting. But it seems like a simple math game initially where Illinois is going to come in with an edge because of the way they shoot the ball in terms of the frequency and the efficiency with which they use it. So this is going to be pretty fascinating to watch. And obviously how Illinois holds up front is going to be one of the things worth watching. But Illinois' offense throughout this run in the NCAA tournament has been absolutely tremendous. When you look at the way that they have been shooting the ball, but specifically how efficient they have been outside of the Iowa game, shooting over 37.5% in 3 of the 4 games that they have played up to this point. But obviously, of these two, these are 2 teams that are going to be underdogs when you get into the next match, because some will tell you that the other one, well, that's the real national championship game. Michigan and Arizona. Michigan initially opens up as a pick with a total of 157. Market heads in the direction of the Wolverines. We're at 1.5 in favor of Michigan with a total of that 157.5. I think it makes some sense. Michigan clearly from a projection standpoint, power rating standpoint, seems to be the better team. The market corrected itself pretty quickly here. And you also have to wonder about the outside noise for Arizona to an extent. Tommy Lloyd finally breaks through. He's in a Final Four with Arizona, and yet all we can talk about is whether or not Tommy Lloyd's going to be there. And then he has this weird moment after Arizona clinches a spot in the Final Four saying, you know what, no matter what, right, respect to the program, Arizona's going to have a great coach even after me.
You know, I love those guys. And they've given me a better life because they helped build this program to what it is now. And the legacy is so strong. And those guys have been so cool and so welcoming to me. The sun may be shining on this team and me coaching it right now, but when it's shining on you, you got to fight like hell to protect it and build it. And so that's what I feel like my number one responsibility is to fight to protect the program and fight to build it for those who came before me and for those that are going to follow after me, because you know what, Arizona's going to have another good coach after me, I promise you. I mean, the place is special.
It's just an odd thing to say, given the rumors that are floating around right now that you might be the next head coach of North Carolina. The two names that consistently are popping up are he and Billy Donovan, but that might be a distraction for Arizona. We'll see if that's actually the case. But the Wildcats, a team that if you've watched this program at all, you know how high I've been on this Arizona team and hard not to be. They're one of the best teams in the country, and now 1.5-point dogs to Michigan. These two teams as well, taking care of business from a spread standpoint, depending on the closing number you use to grade Arizona against Utah State. 3-0-1 against the spread. Michigan 3-1, ATS. Both of these teams, too, again, when you talk about the over-under split, Michigan so far in the NCAA tournament a little bit more skewed to the over. 3 of their 4 games have played over the total. Should be a heavyweight bout, should be a ton of fun. And I would expect that we pretty much sit here throughout the entire week leading up to when they meet this weekend against one another. 1.5 seems like a fair number between the two without a large discrepancy, at least by my measure. But sticking to the guns here, Arizona has been my national champion this entire time. Hard-pressed to move off of that position right now, the way the Wildcats are playing. But we'll get back to more detailed breakdowns of these. Let's hit a little baseball. On the other side, Jensen Lewis, host of VSiN by the Books, will join us. We'll get his thoughts on the Final Four. We'll also get his thoughts on what a monster baseball card is and if he's got some best bets out on the diamond. So you're listening to this podcast because you want an edge. But what if I told you you're only halfway there? You've got the mindset. Now it's time to get the toolkit to match. Here's the thing. Pro bettors spend thousands on data and tools. But what they don't want you to know is that you can get the same edge for a fraction of the cost with VSiN Pro. VSiN Pro gives you access to expert picks, public betting data, prop projections, powerful tools, analytics, and more. Just tap the link in the description and see why thousands of bettors are already using VSiN Pro to cash more bets.
You're watching Money Moves here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
All right, the weekend was absolutely brilliant. I don't know how you guys felt, but it felt so good to not only watch a little bit of college hoops. We had really high-level NBA games, which we'll talk about coming up here in a little bit. But baseball is back. And one of the best things that I think I really enjoy in life in general is public humiliation. And the fact that these umpires are getting it called to them is absolutely fantastic. Baseball got it right. Let's bring in Jensen Lewis on the Progressive Guest Line to talk about the weekend that was and what we're going to look at later today. It is a jam-packed card in Major League Baseball. As a former pitcher, did you enjoy these umpires being mocked and chided throughout the weekend with this ABS system?
Great to be with you, JVT. CV Buckner was giving me PTSD from, it was my rookie year or my second year. One of the only times I struck out Manny Ramirez was a changeup that was at his eyes. Like, I knew that it wasn't right, and CV rung him up. And I thought that Manny was going to have whiplash when he looked back at him. It certainly would have been a tap of the helmet moment there where he would have overturned the call. But I think what's fascinating about it, JVT, is looking at some of the numbers. 54% overturn percentage here thus far in 175 attempts. 63% of those have come from, they call them fielders, catchers and pitchers. Only 2 of those 63% overturns come from pitchers. One of them big yesterday with Ryan Helsley in a critical moment in that Orioles and Twins game. But I think they do get it right. I agree with you. Like, this is, we've been clamoring for it. Like, just get the calls right. That's what both sides want. So I'm more intrigued to see where our leaderboard is, if you will, on individual umpires towards the end of the first month of the season, and which guys may be getting more exposed than some of the others.
So I am loudly so an ageist, and I proudly say it. This is a great stat that was tweeted out for those who did not see this. ABS challenge overturn rate so far in 35 games. This was on the 29th. This was yesterday in the morning. Going into the Sunday games, Jensen, 69% the overturn rate for the 10 oldest umpires, only 39% for the youngest umpires. So just throwing it out there. Now, Adam Burke sent this to me. He had a less ageist note, which was more about, hey, younger guys are just used to watching the velocity and they're used to calling it throughout the entirety of their careers, where maybe some of these older guys have had to transition as the velocity has changed. So just a note, just something to throw out there, but it's an interesting stat nonetheless. All right, let's get to the card today, and let's get to some of the best bets that you have. Really interesting games. Let's start with Giants and Padres tonight, and what you have here. You've got a lot of totals, and this is one that you're going to play under, correct?
Yeah, under 8.5 for this one, JVT, and let's just kind of go off of, you don't want to have instant reactions as far as teams that have done well, teams that have not. But I think we watched 3 straight dominating days of the Yankees pitching staff against the Giants, and it feels like they are already lost at sea here. So no rest for the weary as you go up against San Diego. And, Walker Buehler, not looking for him for 7+ innings here or even into the 6th inning. If he gets 5, we know how dominant that Padre bullpen is. So there's no let up here for the Giants offense. Conversely, you look at where San Diego is, and they just had it handed to them by the Detroit Tigers pitching staff. So I'm anxious to see what Landon Root does there for the Giants tonight. But this felt like a pretty safe under at 8.5. The other one is one of the surprise 3-0 teams with the Miami Marlins. First time since 2009 that they've begun a season undefeated with a 3-0 mark. Chris Paddock going to go for them against Davis Martin. And it's more so looking at where Miami's overall pitching staff has been really good. Now, I get it. They limit a Rockies offense that's off to a really bad start. But the White Sox, I think they're going to have some positive regression here, JVT. They gave up 29 runs in that series against the Milwaukee Brewers. Not the same offense they're going to face here. I'll play the under 8. This one might be very, very close depending on bullpen usage. But those are 2 totals that really jumped out to me tonight.
Yeah, White Sox, Giants, same as you and I. We all have the exact same amount of home runs from over the weekend. The Giants have yet to leave the park here. I'm to that point too. I was hoping. I think you and I talked about this when we were previewing the Giants. We've had you on throughout the offseason. I thought this team was going to be better, and we're only 3 games into your point. But that lineup it lacks so much pop, and you thought that maybe they'd be a little bit better, but they really don't look like they're going to be that much improved from a year ago.
So it'll come down to, for me, and when we get to that first or second week in May, JVT, if this is still a beleaguered group, and especially looking at, the usual suspects, Devers and Willie Adames, Matt Chapman, if there is a serious depression and slug, then it's probably more of a trend that can continue. So the other side is, hey, Tony Vitello, welcome to the big leagues, man. This is not a 4-month sprint in college baseball where you can really drill down on every game. I hope that he's allowing himself a little bit of breathing time. You got to let this thing go. You got to let these guys kind of get into the flow of the season, and hopefully he can kind of let go a little bit, JVT. Otherwise, this is a long year there by the Bay.
All right, you also have a side here. Everybody's darling almost every single year, the Cincinnati Reds. Maybe they are this year at home against Ashcraft and the Pittsburgh Pirates. We've seen this move a little bit in favor of Cincinnati. Total is sitting at 8. What do you have here, side or total?
Yeah, I played an alternate run line on the Reds at -1 at plus $1.10. We'll back Chase Burns here. And I think with Braxton Ashcraft, the ability to kind of get some early offense, it may not be a ton, but just enough to get across. And you're going to put that pressure, back on Pittsburgh to try and generate some balls in play from one of the swing and miss artists here we saw just burst onto the scene last season in Chase Burns. I will be kind of keyed on, the velo for Burns here. Remember, he dealt with a little shoulder issue there the last couple of weeks of camp, but it sounds like that has been worked out. Remains to be seen here later on tonight. A little bit of a warmer weather down in Cincinnati, Great American Ballpark there, but I feel like if the ball's going to fly, and it certainly feels like it has the last couple of days, advantage Cincinnati, just more so opportunities to put more balls in play against the opposing starter and then being able to get to Pittsburgh's bullpen.
All right, Jensen Lewis with us here. Catch VSiN by the books Monday through Friday, 7 to 10 a.m. Eastern. I want to ask you about a couple of other games here that maybe not on your radar. First off, we'll go selfish. The Houston Astros. This is a pretty interesting situation for Houston. So I watched them, not up close, but I watched them intently over the weekend against my Angels. I watched Yusei Kikuchi and Soriano hold them down pretty well through 2 starts. And then, of course, in the last 2 games of the series, you get poor end to the back end of the rotation and then some bad pitch. There's going to be some bad defense and some bad bullpen pitching. inning and they get to score a bunch of runs. My whole point here being is Ranger Suarez can't hold this lineup down in his start here on the road against Houston. And on the other side, we get Lance McCullers, who, look, I like Lance McCullers. He's a good story. He has endured through a lot. But, I mean, minus 115 seems relatively cheap given the matchup that we have here. And from a first five standpoint, Jensen, was where I was really looking to just isolate Suarez against this lineup and go against Lance McCullers. And minus 115 is still the predominant price there.
I think the over actually is quite appetizing here, JVT. Sure. And, of course, the Crawford box is down the left field line for some of your right-handed hitters. I think Yordan Alvarez might be someone to target, a guy that is looking much better here in the first handful of games this season. Looking at also, where they are with the Red Sox offense just coming from Cincinnati, this is traditionally a place that they actually swing it well, guys that have had career statistics there at Daikin Park. But I was actually surprised, and I know you watched intently with your Angels and Astros there. I was actually more surprised that the Astros offense was a bit better. I thought they would really struggle, but getting Jeremy Pena back and watching the middle of the lineup thus far, anxious to see what they do in the first month. So my lean would be that over 8.5, and with McCullers, buddy, your guess is as good as mine. What are we going to see from him? If he is not there with the breaking ball, it's not the same explosive fastball he's had pre-injuries. So I think the Sox lineup might be able to do some damage.
All right, the other guy that is in an absolutely incredible spot right now that I cannot wait to see what he has to offer later tonight, Roki Sasaki is going to get the start for the Los Angeles Dodgers today. For those who don't know, the Cactus League numbers for Sasaki: 15.58 ERA, 12 strikeouts, 15 walks, 8 2/3 innings. Yet here he is Monday against the Guardians. What do we do? I mean, I think this is incredible. Would you really be surprised if all of a sudden he just comes out and he's like, oh, no, I'm efficient, we're fine, everything's good. But then he also might get rocked here. So what do you think about your Guardians against Sasaki tonight?
That's the thing is Cleveland's had a propensity to make guys that are on a really bad streak all of a sudden look like Cy Young. So I'm with you on a little bit of angst right there. Still feels like an over just the way that the Dodgers offense has been. I mean, right out of the chute, it took them a little bit to get going against Arizona, but once they did, it was just bing, bang, boom. I mean, they are so lethal up and down. I am kind of fascinated to see with Chase DeLauder off to the great start, just some massive movement in the American League Rookie of the Year odds. Went upwards of 20-1 at one point, 13-1 on opening day, and now second betting choice to Kevin McGonigal. I would lean it over here, JVT, and if you want to play a run line, I could see the Dodgers getting to the Cleveland bullpen late. Not a lot of reinforcements there, so I think you could lean the Dodgers minus 1.5 as well.
All right, Jensen, we appreciate a couple minutes. Thanks a lot, man, and I think we're going to do this every other week throughout the baseball season, so get used to talking to me.
Love it, buddy. Appreciate it. Have a good rest of your show.
Yep, thanks, man. Appreciate it. I say me because Stormy's never here. She usually is jet-setting off to different places and whatnot. So Stormy will be back next week, though, so that'll be pretty good. Folks, founded in 2011, the Sharp Plays just completed another dominant run, including a 2025 campaign that saw bankrolls double, 15 straight years of winning. It's all documented. Records, logs, posted publicly at sharpplays.com for full performance auditing, something that separates the Sharp Plays from most of the betting industry. With the Sharp Plays moves, sports books takes notice. Advanced AI tools, trusted insider intelligence, and more respected. Watched, feared. Start winning with them at sharpplays.com. Let's get to the baseball card on the other side, get some of the individual starts, some numbers that we like and don't when we return.
You're watching Money Moves here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
We are going to get to the NBA at the top of the hour. We have a lot to get to when it comes to some of the postseason races and whatnot, but we do have some breaking news that I wanted to get out there first, and then we can discuss the ramifications of this coming up a little bit later. But news coming out about 27 minutes ago, Minnesota Timberwolves forward Jaden McDaniels, who out tonight, we learn now, suffered a left knee patella tendinopathy or bone bruise, will be listed as week to week. That obviously matters being week to week as opposed to day to day, because in just over 15 days, we get the start, or at least the end of the regular season, and we get into the start of the NBA postseason. So McDaniels may be slightly questionable for the beginning of the postseason for the Minnesota Timberwolves. Minnesota right now, as it stands, outside of the play-in picture, and likely will finish outside of the play-in picture, as they are about 4 games ahead of the Phoenix Suns. But crazy things can happen here over the span of a week. Anthony Edwards looks like may be on the floor tonight. We will have updates on those games as we move forward. But that is the big news. McDaniels is going to be week to week as we move forward. Jeff Sherman will talk to us as well coming up here in a little bit. There is a team out there in the NBA that might be peaking at the right time and may be worth investing in, and it's one that's let us down quite a bit. We'll tell you who that is when we talk to Jeff coming up in about 30 minutes from now. But we have a deep baseball card, a lot of games that I'm interested in, so let's get to it. I do want to go a little out of order here. I know I have it in our rundown, but let's start with Boston and Houston because I do think that this is a game at the top that is one I'll have my eye on later today. Lance McCullers will get the start. Ranger Suarez will oppose him. Suarez, last year for Philadelphia, very solid, as we know, over the course of 157 in the third innings for Suarez. 3.20 ERA, 3.21 fielding independent. We know what this guy brings to the table. Solid command. Numbers are pretty tight across the board. Give you about 8.5 strikeouts every 9 innings. Doesn't give the ball up in terms of going up in the air, so he can keep it down, limits home runs as well. I think you do like the way that Suarez matches up here with the Houston Astros. And as I mentioned to Jensen Lewis, I think you have some questions as to what this lineup does look like truly for the Houston Astros. Angels pitching was holding them down for the most part in the first 2 games of this series before a shoddy bullpen and terrible defense by multiple players. Logan Hoppe was getting it by a lot of Angels fans, but the Angels defense as a whole was really letting them down in the last 2 games of the set and allowed him to score 20 runs over the last 2 games. But in the first 2, you look at Jose Soriano, who came in there and had a tremendous start against them. 6 innings pitched for Soriano, 2 hits, struck out 7, did end up walking 4, one of which was intentional. But this Angels squad, and then Kikuchi comes in, does his work in the second start. I've had questions about whether or not this Astros lineup is going to be entirely effective. And now you get Suarez here on the other side. And then the real question becomes McCullers and what he is going to offer to you. McCullers, since the end of the 2022 season, which ended short for him, 47 2/3 innings, he has pitched just 55 1/3. That, of course, was last season. Over those 55 innings, strikeout numbers were fine, but the command has been an issue at the tail end of this career for McCullers. And here we are coming off of a season over 50 innings in which he had a 6.51 ERA and a 5.77 fielding independent. Just don't know what you're getting from McCullers, and maybe this is falling for a little something, considering we're looking at a pretty cheap price with a much better pitcher, a lineup I have questions about, and McCullers, who has been out there. But do think that this is going to be a matchup in which minus 115 in the first 5 seems pretty cheap for the Boston Red Sox. So we will see what that looks like here. But Red Sox, for me, are going to be on the radar, and this is going to be a game that is, I think, worth watching just from a morbid curiosity standpoint as well. So let's go to Minnesota and Kansas City. This one's not really going to be too fascinating if the market is right in the way that they're getting this thing priced. But watching what Bubic has to offer here against the Minnesota Twins is going to be front and center. Chris Bubic was awesome for Kansas City a season ago. 116 in the third innings, 2.55 ERA, 2.89 fielding independent. I talked about this with Gil Alexander the other day. Generally, at the beginning of the season, I'm a little cautious with the way that I want to play things, only because I want more data in Major League Baseball. I want to be able to play off of some of the discrepancies and some of the numbers for some of these pitchers, looking at the ERA and the FIP differential. At the beginning of the year, personally, we'll talk to Derek Carty, who's going to be with us coming up in the second hour about projections and how you use some data at the beginning of the year. But using last year's data and kind of finding some of these guys that either over the course of a season maybe had some room for some regression, or a guy like Bubic who had been very consistent with his numbers and is probably going to be solid as we move forward. I think it's definitely worth talking about here with Bubic in this start against the Minnesota Twins. Twins also, as we know, a team I've got under a win total on, a team that I think is going to be sellers and pretty bad so far this year. But looking at Bubic today to have a pretty strong game, I think it's worth looking at here in this start against Minnesota. We also get our first look at Kansas City here at home, which is going to be a ton of fun. We've talked a lot about Kansas City and playing at home and these adjusted fences and what that's going to look like for them. I am very intrigued by that. They started the season out there in Atlanta. Now they get their first home set at home. That's redundant. But you do wonder if we see the effects of this new park and the way it looks here, not new park, but new fences for this offense immediately, and what that means against the Minnesota Twins and Simeon Woods Richardson, who's getting the start. Woods Richardson last year, fine. I think we know exactly what he is at this point. 4.04 ERA, 4.52 fielding independent, a little bit of room for maybe being a little bit worse. Pretty solid strikeout guy. Command could use some work, got a little bit worse last year, and the home runs got a little worse for him as well. So you do wonder if that's going to come back to bite him in a park that has been adjusted now. Last season, 2025, over 100. What do we have here for Simeon Richardson? Let's see. 111 in the third innings, hard hit rate of just about 41%, barrel rate of over 11%, so it gives up a ton of hard contact. Wouldn't be surprised if we see the ramifications here of Vinny P and the company can get this thing done, maybe get some runs in and blow out the Minnesota Timberwolves. And they cover potentially a run line situation as a 1.5 run favorite at about plus 115 or so. But Bubic in a pretty good spot. Kansas City, I think, in a good spot too. And market, depending on where you look, betting up ever so slightly for the Kansas City Royals. Rangers on the road against the Orioles. Let's go here. Jack Leiter is going to get the start for the Texas Rangers. Now, Justin, our producer, is putting together a system of his own, an angle of sorts when it comes to baseball props. And we'll just say it was a good weekend, right, Justin? I think that's a fair way to put it. A good weekend for this angle. Jack Leiter over 4.5 strikeouts would be the angle here in baseball for you, and what Justin's put together. We'll have more details on this as we get a little bit more data and how this is shaken out. But very similar and akin to what Luke DeVosta was doing for college basketball. Anyway, Baltimore Orioles about $1.26 favorite here. Chris Bassett is going to get the start for Baltimore. 3.96 ERA last season, 4.01 fielding independent. Nothing really crazy to write home about. And on the other end, you get Leiter. This really is just a matchup. I don't have an angle. It seems like it's relatively priced solid. I guess over 151 2/3 innings for Leiter. You can make the argument. Command was an issue for him. Walked just about 4 every 9 innings. Walk rate about 10.4%. If you looked at the fielding independent numbers, maybe some room for regression, and maybe that pops here on the road against Baltimore. But these are two teams that I'm relatively high on when you look at the grand scheme of things. Baltimore in the AL East, a potential division winner, one that I think can happen. And the Texas Rangers, a team that I did bet to win their division. I do think that this is a fun matchup of two teams that are probably going to meet in the postseason, but a little bit of a study show here. But either way, we're not seeing a ton of movement right now. About a 3-cent difference in the opening price to the current price right now. And the number has moved ever so slightly to the over. Opened up 9 minus 110 here at Circa and other spots. Here we're sitting at like 9 over minus 115 or so. Let's go to Cleveland and LA because I do want to hit this. We talked a little bit about this with Jensen Lewis, but this is, I don't know what to do here. Parker Messick versus Roki Sasaki today. We see the Dodgers open up as about $1.98 favorite. They're still floating in that range here. 8.5 shaded to the over at minus 122. Part of this pricing is obviously Messick, who's getting the start here for the Cleveland Guardians. We know what Messick is if you look at his overall profile from last season. Over the course of 39 2/3 innings, a 2.72 ERA and a 2.98 fielding independent, very good. Not dominant in terms of the strikeouts, but still 23% strikeout rate. Really good command a season ago. Kind of flew in the face of some of his minor league numbers, albeit over smaller sample sizes, but still the numbers for him in the minors were much higher in terms of the walk rate than the small sample size that Messick showed in the majors last year. So which of those things are going to appear against the Dodgers? But Sasaki is obviously going to be the story. He is a ERA over 15 in spring training. He's got a negative strikeout to walk ratio as well. This is a guy that did not perform well, and that was over the course of 8 2/3 innings. But as we talked about with Jensen, sometimes this Cleveland Guardians lineup, which in 2 games over 4 looked absolutely awful, and then another 2 when they split the 4 set with Seattle looked fantastic. You don't know what you're going to get from him on a day-to-day basis. And so Sasaki coming out there, performing relatively well over the course of a short start wouldn't be, I think, insane. And you also just look at the prices we're kind of getting to here. Despite the fact that Sasaki has struggled the way that he has, this Dodgers team is still laying $1.94 at home against the Cleveland Guardians. Also, I didn't know this because I just looked it up out of curiosity. The longest winning streak to start a season, I feel like, is relatively small. It's only 13. So I thought that would be longer for some reason. But I was thinking about the Dodgers, obviously, and looking that up, so I did not realize that was going to be the case. And by the way, speaking of the Mariners, we can get a little bit more on this later, but Mariners saw an opener of about $1.20 in favor of Luis Castillo and the Seattle Mariners versus Ryan Weathers and the New York Yankees. That did not last. We're now at a near pick. Some spots, Superbook, Circa, are both sitting as favorites, minus 112, minus 109. So we've seen a flip of favorites here in favor of the Bronx Bombers. Not a surprise, pretty dominant performance against the San Francisco Giants in their opening series there. Baseball season obviously here. VSiN Pro just made it a whole lot more profitable with Major League Baseball AI player prop projections powered by Opta AI. We're giving you data-driven projections for both hitters and pitchers compared directly to DraftKings lines so you know exactly where the value is. And every day we break it all down into the top value plays and strong plays so you don't have to do the heavy lifting. Get access now with the VSiN Pro subscription at VSiN.com/MLBprops.
You're watching Money Moves here on VSiN, the sports betting network.
Yeah, it's a Monday, and we've made this a regular occurrence, I think, here on the Mondays, except the difference is Chris Macero, who is joining us here at the desk, is in person, but Mondays with Macero have been a little bit of a regular here on Money Move, so Money Move Mondays with Macero has a nice ring to it. What's up, man?
Nothing. That is good. What are those called? Alliterations?
Yes, alliterations.
Alliterations. I like it. Macero Mondays. Here we go.
I'm getting a little lonely, too. You know, Stormy's out flaunting around in Japan. I got a text at 2 a.m. Japanese time about 7-Eleven egg salad sandwiches, so somebody's living it up out there.
Is she on special report? Is she going to be coming back with some...
That's what I'm thinking, hoping.
Some tips or something we can make some money on?
I'm hoping so. They are going to go see, I think they're going to go watch some sort of, not the Tokyo Dome, but like their AAA affiliate or the equivalent of that. They're going to be out there watching baseball, so maybe we get some insider tips on that.
Yeah, maybe we get some live betting.
Yeah,
betting.
That's some opportunities
4 a.m. bets.
All right, let's talk. So let's start with this first off. Chris is here, first off, because we like having him. Second, he is now tied for first in the Circa College Hoops Challenge with Paul Stone. Very strong weekend for you in the contest. Myself, not so much. Chasing some strategy and trying to get a leg up, and it ultimately did not work. So you are in the running, and I will say this because this is going to tie into somewhat of what you're thinking here. Last year, this is the last time I'm going to bring this up, I was going into the Final Four with the chance to catch Paul Stone. So what I did was I listened to every Paul Stone appearance and podcast to find out what he was going to do, and then I played the opposite. Now, he went 3-0 in the Final Four, so it didn't really matter, but that was the strategy. You will not be revealing your hand, correct?
No, I'm not going to reveal my hand, and a lot of guys on the Saturday morning show, which I usually tune into, but, you know, since I'm in Vegas, I haven't been up at 6 a.m. every day, but I rewound a little bit, and a lot of guys were coming on live and giving out their picks, and everyone was taking the underdogs. I was leaning favorites anyways, but you know, guys were just showing their hands, so I figured, you know, even more so I'm going to go with the favorites. And it worked out. I actually had all 4 favorites in, but then when the line got steamed up on the Illinois game, I figured, you know what, everyone's going to take this. So just to be safe, I'm going to take it too. My other pick was going to be Duke, so it wouldn't have mattered. I would have gone 3-1 either way. And Duke, it's just last year I had a lot of money on Duke. This year I didn't have much of anything on them. But, I mean, to be a Duke fan – and to have that happen 2 years in a row, similar type of situation. You can't get the ball in bounds, 3-pointers, fouls, and just utter disaster. Comedy of errors. And not to have, I know Caleb Foster wasn't having a good game. He didn't have any points, but he was out there 13 minutes. How he's not out there in the last possession, your most veteran player, your point guard, to hold the ball, shoot the free throws. You know, I'm going to give Danny Hurley a lot of credit. They obviously coached the fact that, hey, we're not going to foul, even though they think you're going to foul, and was going to toss it over. And they just jumped up like 2 volleyball players, and it was just an amazing job that Mullins got the steal and hit the 3 all within 10 seconds. Just what did Raftery say? You know, just absolutely impossible, or literally impossible was his call. It truly was impossible.
The ending was incredible. It was one of those where you're watching it and you can't help but scream out an expletive with the way that the thing ended. This is on Shire here, so check this out. I can hear Matt Humans ringing my ears because he always brings this up. Like, well, 1.3% might not have been wrong, and I always tell him, well, the 1.3% might have happened, Matt. Look at the peak in-game win probabilities of Duke's last 4 losses. You mentioned the meltdown last year of the Final Four. In-game probability winning that 97.5%. The loss to Texas Tech in December 2025, 97.8%. The loss to North Carolina in the regular season, 95.1%. And then last night, a peak in-game win probability of 98.7%. And they still end up losing that game. Is this Jon Scheyer? Is this the label for him?
I don't think it's a label for him. He's only been there 2 years. He's been incredible. I think he's actually a pretty good coach. I just feel like he doesn't have the, you don't have the veteran leaders when you do one of the, he's almost like a Coach Cal situation now with it's all these 5 stars that come in, only 1 year they're going to play. I would put the Houston game as worse than yesterday, even though the comeback was greater, because last year you had Cooper Flagg and Con Knippel, 2 guys who shoot the lights out from the free throw line, and they just couldn't get the ball to Con Knippel, which still drives me nuts. And I mean, that's just kind of crazy. 97.5, I would have made that one 99.5 based on how well Knippel shot it from the free throw line. But a lot of people giving Shire a lot of grief. I would have probably had Caleb Foster on the floor as the most leader, most veteran guy in the team. But I don't want to lay it all on Shire. Just it's one of those just miracle things. That's why we love the tournament, and we didn't have a lot of that this year, so I'm glad we did. Yesterday watching that in the sports book, I mean, it's one of those things you're never going to forget. Just awesome. Everyone was just saying, what the hell just happened? I think that's what Hurley's mom was uttering. What the hell just happened?
I think it was a different word than hell, but yeah.
I mean, I pretty much, on Instagram, Twitter, I watch it like, I don't even like UConn or Duke, and I watch it like 300 times, different angles. The Bill Raftery thing, you saw Grant Hill, at first he was shocked, and then he was sick because he realized Duke lost. It didn't really sink in right away. So, I mean, I'm just happy it happened because we needed one of those exciting things to kind of lift a little bit bland all-favorite tournament.
Yep. And some of these blowouts, too. The last point on Duke here before we get to some of the just general thoughts on what these two games are going to look like. Mike DeCourcy, I thought, wrote a great piece, and this is the way he slugged it at the beginning. Duke recruited the best freshmen 4 times in the past 7 years, but Cooper Flagg and Paolo Banchero lost in the Final Four. Zion Williamson and now Cameron Boozer didn't even get that far. Why? Because Duke's not covering itself at the most important position, point guard. It has been an approach from Duke for a while now where they haven't really gone after the big fish at the most pivotal position. You think you saw it at the end of that game there, and I think maybe you'll start to see Shire change a little bit there, but that's going to be something to watch.
Or maybe keep a veteran point guard, like, for example, Arizona with Jared Bailey. He's been there. He's a senior guy. He's come from, he wasn't at Arizona the whole time, but, bring in a veteran. In the NIL, you can do that now. It's like, hey, we need a good offensive tackle for the next football season. You can just sign the best one that's available, if you want. So that's one of the things they probably should look at. Exciting games. I'm excited for the Final Four. We got some good teams and some great coaches.
All right, well, matchup-wise, you don't have to give away your hand, but we'll start just Texas. I'm looking at my baseball notes. Michigan and Arizona, the most important matchup on the floor. What do you think is going to matter?
Well, I mean, they're both great offensively and both great defensively. The thing that makes you wonder is all these rumors now with Tommy Lloyd is he made that offhanded weird comment about.
We played it earlier.
Oh, okay, yeah, that weird comment. Like, we're going to have a great coach no matter what. People saying that Arizona's not a blue blood, and I don't think blue blood really matters as much anymore in the NIL. I mean, I don't think that term is going to be used in 10 years from now if you just pay as much as you want to pay. I mean, look what Texas Tech's doing in college football. So you kind of think Dusty May probably has a coaching advantage. When Michigan is playing their A game, they're going to be the toughest team to beat, and we saw it yesterday. All of a sudden, just turned on. What did they score, like 30 points in a row? And when they're hitting their threes, they're the toughest to beat. What concerns me most about Michigan, I've talked about it 100 times this year, is the turnovers. But Cadeau has been really good. He's only had 7 turnovers in the tournament, which is huge for them. You got to love the backcourt of Arizona and the front line. Obviously, they're a younger team. Koa Pete and what a monster game he had yesterday. Freshman player, and Burry's a freshman. But that backcourt is definitely stronger. I'm going to give the advantage to Arizona in the backcourt. But Mara's tough. I mean, he's almost like a Wemby. Like, they're throwing these alley-oops. He's not even jumping to dunk them. So that's going to be the best game. Obviously, that should be – I wish that was the final, but what can you do based on the bracket? So I'm excited to see that one. I can't wait. That's just such an awesome game.
What's going to matter the most in Illinois and UConn?
Well, can UConn maintain the high from that comeback? That's a lot. I know you got 4 days or 5 days for the next game, but that's still an amazing high to win that game. And obviously, we're talking about it. They're going to be talking about it all week. Illinois veteran team, they get a lot of older guys, 22, 23, 21-year-old players. Obviously, Caravan, the veteran leader, he's got probably one of the most winning. He's like he's almost like Bill Walton or Lou Alcindor now. He's going for his third championship. You got to give obviously the coaching advantage to Hurley. Then maybe they just got that UConn magic going again. So I don't know. I think I'm definitely leaning. The line is a little suspect to me. Ken Palm makes the game Illinois 4. Yeah. And we saw 1.5, 2. I'm not sure. Are we at 2 still?
2.5. Yep.
2.5. So I don't know. I'm gonna have to think long and hard because I don't like.
Don't give it away.
Brad Underwood scared. No, but I'm saying Brad Underwood, Bobby. Danny Hurley. I mean, that's a huge. Obviously, Danny Hurley has the big advantage there. So I'm not sure yet.
We got 60 seconds. Let our audience know about the 2 NHL long shots you got.
Okay, so last night I played a very small bet at 500 to 1. I took a flyer on the Flyers. Super hot team right now. They beat Dallas last night as an underdog, and they didn't move the number. So I made a bigger bet on the Flyers. They're only. I think they're only a point out or 2 points out. They lose
2 points out.
2 points out. They lose a tiebreaker, but Columbus just took 2 brutal losses, one to San Jose and one to Boston yesterday. Boston was up. Boston was down 3-0. They scored 3 goals in the third to tie it. Went to overtime. Obviously, Columbus still gets the point, but they might be reeling off those 2 losses. And I took a flyer today on San Jose. They're 4 points back, but they get 6 games in a row at home, have a big game tonight, a double revenge game against the Blues. San Jose was 850-1 to win the Cup. I don't expect them to win the Cup, but hey,
sure.
If they make the playoffs, it's worth a hedge. I'd like to take some long shot, like some big long shots.
Chris Macero at Real Gauge, currently tied for first in the Circuit College Hoops Challenge heading into the Final Four. Thanks for stopping by, dude.
Anytime, buddy.